So this is one of the Extinction Rebellion stickers that I made a notice, right? And it's got all the different legislation on here through the Town and Country Planning Act and the statutory instruments. And I want to draw attention to this part here. An advertisement required to be displayed by standing orders or of either House of Parliament or by an enactment of law or any condition imposed by any enactment on the exercise of any function. Well, so imposed by any enactment or on the exercise of a function. So you can have, this is saying that advertisements, what is an advertisement? Well, we know what the definition of advertisement means. In the Town and Country Planning Act and the statutory instrument extension of the Act, advertisement means any sign, letter or notice or a representation. Remember that representation is also like a legal representation, speech, statement, sign, notice. Well, a petition, an act that is a petition, the right of the petition, the right of the subjects, the people, to petition, right, either of the Houses of Parliament or the King. Well, what is that? If you are going to petition, what do you do for that? You ask people for signatures. You are issuing requests to people, making a request, communicating a request. That's actually required by the Act. By the 1688 Bill of Rights requires you to collect signatures, right? That's an act which requires you to go about as well. That's what it is. What is the process of what the act is telling you to actually go out and do? The exercise of any function. It's exercising the function of an act, right? And then, condition and a condition opposed. A condition opposed through that enactment is that you can't be prosecuted or held to any commitments. Advertisement required to be displayed by standing orders of either of the Houses of Parliament or an enactment of law. Well, that's a law that they've made. Standing order means that it is not actually an enactment of law, but it's clearly directions given by Parliament. So where are the directions given by Parliament that would be directing you to required to put a notice somewhere, right? Well, I would suggest that. Right, so look, this is the Parliament website, right? This is the Parliament website. So this is the government. This is the government, right? But this is not the government legislation pages with the laws on it. But it is a government page, nonetheless, giving you directions. And this is where it tells you to... It's giving you a direction instruction. And I'm sure that this is within giving standing orders or directions. Share this petition on Facebook, email, Twitter, but not excluding YouTube, right? But it's not just the actual document of the petition. The petition itself includes your promo. Now, Parliament are really fussy about what they put in the petitions, like, with links and stuff like that, but they shouldn't be. And this is the problem we're having with the petitions website at Parliament. This when you're running a petition on change.org and 38 degrees, it is a legitimate petition to the government, right? And you will be required to share a petition on Facebook, email, Twitter, YouTube, or wherever with the same legal directions, authority, standing orders as what they're giving you on here. Doesn't matter whether it's on change.org or 38 degrees. And this is why I believe there is this is you're issuing the advert, right, to these places, advertising the petition in these places. This is where the government gives the directions, right? And it includes these platforms, or even publishing it in the newspaper. In fact, it's got a little letter there, like sending a letter in the post or put into a newspaper. Now, this is what it means in the law. And this is Class F. Class F is the class that we use the right to petition enactment. Class E is for elections and referendums and so forth. But you fall within two classes, because we know that when you're running elections and referendums and so forth, you are petitioning the government or bringing a case to the government. And Class F is when the citizens use an enactment. You can even use an enactment, an advertisement required to be displayed by standing orders of either Houses of Parliament. Right? Well, that's in connection with Parliament. That is something also that is in connection with Parliament, because it's an advertisement required to be displayed by standing orders from either Houses of Parliament, or an enactment, or any condition imposed by an enactment, or the exercise of a function. Well, to do the petition and collect the signatures, for it to work, for you to obtain them, and for people to even look at the petition and see what it is, you have got evidence, or it can't function properly because there's nothing there to read, right? This is where this is the whole thing. And also, this is why in the Human Rights Act in section 6.6, forget all the articles, because they are literally the simple and the simplified version, right? 6.6 distinguishes also anything that is done in connection with Parliament, in connection with either Houses of Parliament. Now, if you're petitioning Parliament and the Act of Law requires to collect signatures from the public, and the Parliament petitions website also has standing orders to give you or directions to tell you to use the platforms to share the advert on those platforms, then it's an advertisement that is required to be displayed on those platforms, or else how are you going to get the signatures? Right? Now, if you don't say you have to display it, then how are you going to function? How are you going to fulfill the functions? It can't function if you can't collect any signatures, if no one sees it. If people can't see it, it can't function. And if it doesn't say why you should sign it, or advertise or promote it, or the website address for it, they don't know where it is. Now, you've also got creative license for colours. What colours shall we have the advertisement? It doesn't have to be black and white. This is green and black. Are we petitioning as a individual or a group of people, right? And if we're petitioning as a group of people, is it going to be too long to list every name? So can we give that group a name, like Extinction Rebellion? why is it all these companies are allowed to petition under the company name or submit, lay bills to Parliament and lobbying, right? But they don't want, our names of our campaigns on Parliament website, or they tried to have them off before. So this here is everything. This is about when I said in the last video, the freedom of the press, the freedom of the press, we have to be able to use the press. It's free to use it. Now, I believe that regardless of these newspapers being privately owned for-profit companies, I believe that in the First Amendment and the right to petition and so forth, this free speech and the free speech, right to petition and freedom of the press are all together. In fact, the free speech clause in the right to petition is in connection with political matters, actually. And that means everything. And the freedom to publish and the freedom to use the press, this is a very, very important insight, which I believe now is significant. And that is that why do newspapers have a public notices section? They have this section, public notices. They have their own stories that they write. They have their own stories that they run, and people can telephone up and give them stories, communicate them. But also, you can put a notice in there. It used to be free for public notices. You used to be able to put a free notice. Not all newspapers charged even for public notices, but also companies and businesses can pay to advertise without prejudice or discrimination, apparently, these days. But, you would question that. Rishi Sunak's making more and more laws for discrimination, but we see more and more private companies saying that they can pick and choose, that they can do what they want. Well, why is Rishi Sunak making those laws? If Sunak's enacting more and more laws for discrimination, but all these bigger platforms are saying that they actually aren't subject to those laws, by the time that they've bought up all the companies, like BlackRock and Vanguard, and they're all owned by Amazon or YouTube, then where's left for those laws to be enforced? Who are those laws actually made for? If they're not for... is that only us, or we can't discriminate against each other? But the platforms can. But the platforms actually own everything. So the entire business class, let's say the entire business sector isn't actually subject to discrimination, but every citizen is. So what Sunak, therefore, Suella Braverman and Priti Patel effectively would have done by the time you finished is that they've made it so no citizen can discriminate against anyone, but the companies can do what the hell they want. So what they're actually doing is liberating themselves and their companies from law, which is giving themselves immunity, which is what they do to these building sites. Beep, 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 beep. Harass people, demolish buildings, immunity. What they're actually creating is they are forming some sort of army. That it's like when an army's abroad, it does what it wants. It's not meant to be there. It's occupying foreign territory. It's armed and it's got armor and weapons. And, its very presence is illegal. Although they've got some rules of, the rules of engagement now. Check your weapons first, and then we'll kill you all. We don't really want you in this country. Would you mind leaving, please? Oh, I'm sorry, this is an invasion. We're being invaded by these companies. Now, there is a legal requirement as part of the function of petitioning and under orders from the petition's website to go and publish on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and I say YouTube as well, and by email, right? That is a legal requirement. And the fact that the newspapers, the freedom of the press is the freedom to use the press. And that is why there is always a section that is meant to be reserved for public notices. And that is why when the Evening Standard always published my petitions, but more recently they didn't want to publish the Charles petition for Republic, I challenged them on illegal campaign intervention and 5013C, and then they decided that they were going to publish it after all. So I was right. And they can't actually refuse, because that public notices section is really, it represents and it is there. It is reserved for an area that you have got a right to access and publish through. That is because that is what newspapers are for. It's like public notice boards around town. Most of them are run by the council, but it's like having a private owned public notice board, but it's still a public notice board. And private people might put their own things in there and own it, but they've got to let you put certain things in there because that's what it is. It's there for that reason. And this is why it's very sketchy and dodgy with David Cameron selling off all of the public services to private companies, because they don't want to actually uphold. It's like knocking that building down, basically. They bought that crooked pub and, they didn't have the right to demolish it, and they owned it, and they just did what they want. Because these enterprises don't actually respect or uphold the law or rights. And if they can't get their own way, then this is what happens. They, like what Matt Kennard is saying, and like what Extinction Rebellion is saying, they just... they've got that much money now that they sue the government if they don't do what they want, or they are making the law up and handing it to the ministers. This is what's happening now. We have got a right, and I can tell you something, right? The enactment, right? Any condition by an enactment or exercise of a function. Well, that's what Robert F. Kennedy's doing now. That is what Marianne Williamson and Robert F. Kennedy are doing now. They are running for president, and they're exercising a function of the election run is to get people, for it to function, you have to ask people to vote for you, and in order for them to vote for you and fulfill that function of voting, they need to know why they should vote for you. That is a function of it. It's not just when the results are coming in after everyone's been to the polling station. It is a process, and that is in connection with it. Marianne Williamson and Robert F. Kennedy running for president and telling people why they should vote is as much as a function as turning up and putting the ticket in the ballot box. It is in connection with that. It is that process, and this is why collecting signatures for petitions and publishing them is in connection with either of the Houses of Parliament or local council authority, His Majesty's local council chamber with mace. So, I mean, this is it. You are doing it, and this is what it is in the Human Rights Act, Section 6.6, and this is why it's things done in connection with Parliament are distinctly separate from the local authorities. Things done in connection with the local authorities, like magistrates' courts, even, and the civil court, and the police. This is why they're not really supposed to get involved with petitioning, because you're doing it under the jurisdiction of Parliament, supposedly. It's meant to be. And this is why, if you are prosecuted by the police unlawfully, or the CPS or the courts, you're meant to, tell them your rights. You've got the right to remain silent, but, you're not going to remain silent when you say, excuse me, I'm doing a petition to Parliament, I'm engaged. And this is what Section 7.1b is, and if they ignore that and prosecute you, then you will be a victim of the illegal prosecution, because all prosecutions are illegal. So you will therefore be a victim of an illegal prosecution. And that is what the Human Rights Act Section 7.1b says. You can rely on that right in any proceedings, because if they're bringing proceedings against you, you need to tell them to stop them, to cease. And I don't think they can bring an injunction in with matters that have been brought to Parliament. The thing is, a petition is an injunction, or at least raising a case. The thing with the Atlanta Forest, the whole Atlanta the Stop Cop City, Save Atlanta Forest, they've got the 100,000 signatures now, or whatever they needed for this. Well, they've got more than 70,000 for this referendum to stop this big building project. And they're going to be on the next ballot apparently now. But the work's meant to be starting for this project, Stop Cop City. It's meant to be starting. It might start before this ballot. So what they're saying is, you know, should it, you know, the lawyers are looking at getting an injunction. Well, the petition is not a case to the local government for something brand new. It's actually a case to prevent something which has been given approval, which they want to intervene in, object against, overturn. So the petition is an injunction. The petition is an injunction. The petition is an injunction. That's what it is. It is. If you read the Professor Karen Bowie paper, the petition is injunctioning, intervention. It's a legal process to intervene, and not only intervene, halt. And when they hand those in, it's actually been submitted. I don't think that you need a separate court order for an injunction, because all that's doing is acknowledging what would it be based on, the fact that you're doing a petition. But what is the petition? It is acting to get the matter overturned. And if there's a date for that, then the council really should halt the action. It's almost like staying proceedings. In a court you can stay proceedings. Well, if the council or local authorities grant permission on something, but local people have got something to save it, it ain't going to be saved if it's not there anymore. So it's almost like the equivalent of a stay proceedings. They've got to really suspend their decision on the planning. They've really got to suspend their decision until after the referendum's been made, because the petition, you don't need to get an injunction. The petition is a legal action. It's a lawful action of proceedings, and this is the thing that you recognise through, you know, when you had justices involved, and the Lord of the Articles and so forth, or the magistrates of Manchester, the magistrates of London, or three justices, or the grand jury. This is the thing. People aren't really clicking on what actually it is. It is proceedings. So you don't go about getting the signatures to get on a ballot, right, without, you know, if you lose your driving license and you appeal the decision, you can apply for it back from the court. Right, you have to fill a form in and apply for it, but as you're appealing it, you can get it back. Now, you could say that that may mean that even though, you know, these people are petitioning against this Stop Cop City thing, you know, maybe Stop City can carry on with their license or their warrant, but it's the people who are bringing the person who brings the action, the person who brings the appeal, has a right to have they are the ones appealing for reversing this permission. So whatever decision had been made on it should be suspended. That's basically it. When you've got your driving license taken away, that decision is lifted until you get your license back. Therefore, when you're petitioning the council, similarly, if they want if they're asking for protection of the woodland because, you know, they're getting a ballot, it is an appeal. It's an appeal. The Stop Cop City it is an appeal to the council. Therefore, surely the decision that was made, which they're wanting to appeal against, should be lifted. And that council chamber has certain judicial functions and decisions. Similarly, it's not a court, but this is politics. The decision that the authority made, just like if it was a court case, the decision that the court made to be lifted, you don't actually need an injunction additionally, because the petition campaign is the equivalent itself of the injunction. That is basically how it is. And it's just a matter of even knowing what even it is when you're petitioning something. If you read the Professor Karen Bowie paper, it explains it all. People don't realise, right, this actually is a proper, process. It did have justices and so forth involved, but not with the local courts. It's meant to be to the Parliament, and they only really meant to refer things to local courts if it's a local matter. To local council authority chambers even. But when it comes to this is the key to the whole problem with having Marianne Williamson and RFK on the TV when they're turning them down and so forth. Because they've got a function and role. The TV has them. The television has the results on there straight away as soon as the results are coming in, and they get the graph up on there. But in relationship to all the different candidates and them being able to speak and so forth, freedom to use the press, particularly when there is a legal requirement. The American legislation might be slightly different, but I don't think that it will be that different, because it's all based on the First Amendment. So it effectively means the same thing and is for the same purpose, and really, Robert F. Kennedy really should kind of maybe be helping a bit out with this Cop City campaign, maybe get in touch with their legal team, which is that Alex Joseph in the Atlanta prosecutor's office, and this other Kostanoff guy.